be here. I love seeing so many familiar faces, and I feel like I'm right at home here. So today I'd like for this to be about you and your needs. So we spend so much time in the weeds every day doing the work that we do, figuring out what to boost and what not to boost and what to post and all those different things. Sometimes it's important to kind of zoom out and think about a bigger picture. And so that's what we want to do today. We want to make sure that while we're busy doing the daily work of our organizations, that we're not missing out on that big picture perspective that helps us make sure that we are on the right track and we're doing the right things overall. So just for the record, today when we talk about the forest or the trees, we are talking about this, right? This is the trees. We spend a lot of time thinking about the trees and those activities that we are doing that are going to produce more of these trees. Events, social media, mailings, one-on-one conversations, and all that fun stuff. So let's see here. So the forest looks like this. Can anybody guess what the forest looks like before I change the slide? What's a forest? It's people! People! Okay, so we got to remember what we're doing when we're talking about our causes, right? This is about bringing people together into community for the causes that matter to them and to you. And so this whole session is going to be talking about focusing on people and focusing on the folks who make what we do so successful and help us accomplish the missions that we have. We need the money, but there's somebody who decides to give the money, right? Somebody has to make a decision to click donate, to write a check, to swipe a card. That's a decision that's made by a human in every single case, even if we're talking about corporate donors, right? We're still talking about human decisions. So if it matters, it measures. If it matters, it measures. This is something that you need to be thinking about if you're going to be efficient with your work. If it matters, it measures. What are you measuring? So let's hear just from a few people, what are you measuring? And say it real loud so everybody can hear.
Donor retention rate.
Yes, we're going to talk about that today. So what do you measure in regard to donor retention?
For us, it's active donors, which is 3 years an active donor for us, year over year, consistency in them giving.
Okay, so you're doing year over year active donors, retention from year to year, okay. And then active giving, what is that?
3 years and newer.
3 years.
Sooner, I'm sorry.
Okay, so they've given in sometime in the last 3 years. So after 3, they're lapsed.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to talk about lapsed donors in just a minute, but that's awesome. What else do people measure around here?
ROI.
Return on investment. Okay, so what does ROI mean to you? How are you measuring ROI? Make sure you make more than you spend. Do you include staff time in your ROI?
We're not that. No.
Okay. You may be losing money if you're not including staff time in your ROI calculation. Guess what? I'm going to say something crazy. It's okay to lose money. You just have to do that intentionally. Right? You have to know that you're losing money and intentionally lose the money, because oftentimes when you're losing that money, it's to get a new donor in the door, and that's more important than actually making money. Right? So we talk about fundraisers. Fundraisers oftentimes lose money. That's okay, but don't think you're making money if you're losing money. Okay? So counting that staff time, don't be afraid to do it. It's okay, because it's okay to lose money. Because it's as long as it's a long-term investment. What else are people measuring?
Number of donors.
Number of donors. Excellent. What else?
Dollars raised.
Dollars raised. I was going to say, come on, guys. Let's dollars raised. Good. What else?
Specifically, monthly donors versus one-time donors.
Monthly versus one-time. Okay. Good. And kind of, so Also, like the vehicle, like where'd they come from? Are you measuring that? Like did they give one time at an event? Or
Right. What leads to the ongoing donors that give each month?
excellent. So we're going to talk about some ways to add some of these numbers together in a really easy fashion to give you some sense of who your best donors are and things like that without paying outside contractors. Some folks are big enough to pay, and you need to pay to do that, to get a really good donor survey, figure out who your best donors are. Other folks are small enough that you can do some things in-house before you outsource. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. Does this look familiar to folks? Anybody seen the donor fundraising cycle before? So if you had to say where on the cycle we would typically start, if we were starting a brand new organization from scratch, it would be where? Develop the case, right? We got to know who we are and what we do so that we can talk to other people about who we are and what we do. And then we are moving around that cycle, right? We go from develop the case, prospect research and identification. So what does that mean? Prospect research and identification. Who are we talking to? Who might want to give to us? So some people say everybody. Probably not, right? So if your current prospect pool is everybody, we probably need to narrow it down a little bit. That's the boosting, right? We're not going to boost to everybody. We're going to boost to the Subaru driving dog owners in Centerville, right? So just understanding who those folks are. Raising awareness, once you know who they are, they need to know who you are. And then we're going to cultivate and consult. What does that mean? Get their input.
Develop that relationship.
Develop the relationship. What might that look like?
Who they are and why they would be invested in your organization.
Right. Who are they? Why would they be invested in your organization? How are you going to cultivate them? How are you going to build that relationship with them?
Face-to-face.
Could be, right? It's going to depend on who they are and what your resources are. But what are some ways that you can build a relationship with them without face-to-face? Facebook groups, sure. What else? Email. What else? Yeah.
Personalized letters.
Yeah. There's nothing that turns me off more, and it might be just my years of fundraising, and sometimes I have to say, oh, but I love the mission, I'm going to give them anyway, but it says, dear friend. Oh gosh, mail merge is so easy. If you don't know how to mail merge, talk to somebody, because it's so easy to put somebody's name in there. And the biggest risk you run, of course, is getting it kind of wrong. But then, if they're upset, they'll call you, right? And I'm still giving to this particular organization. I called them 4 times to get my name fixed, because my name is Ann Charles, right? It's not Ann, it's Ann Charles. That's fine. Ann spelled many ways, right? And it's weird, and I know it's weird, so I'll call, and then they drop the E off the Ann. That it's still, Ann and Charles. No, that's not my husband's name. My husband has a different name. That's, so you call back. But during that time, I get to have a conversation with them about what they are doing and who they are. And so that's actually can be an opportunity for you. So if the worst thing that can happen is they call you mad and you talk them down and you're super apologetic and you tell them about a cat. Whatever it happens to be, don't be afraid to miss a name. Don't be afraid to personalize just because you're going to get a name wrong. You can make it right. It's better to try to connect with folks on that level. Okay, everybody familiar with this? So who can explain the concept behind this pyramid? Say that again. Say it over here.
Start them at the bottom.
Start them at the bottom. What else?
Hierarchy of needs.
Work them up. Hierarchy of needs. I like that. We got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's kind of true, right? But yes, you got that. I think it might be flipped though, right? Because the top might be a little bit more needy as far as your time and your commitment to certain individuals. You might have to invest more time. It's fewer people, but it's more time. Any other comments about this?
You work your way there. Of
Yeah. I like that because that's a perfect segue into my next slide. I always hated the fact that we were looking at these in isolation. And so some of you who have known me for a while, they've seen this before. But I don't like us thinking about this. There's this donor pyramid and then there's this fundraising cycle. No, it really kind of needs to be like a cone or a mountain, right? So we're integrating those two. And really, as we go through this process, we're going up, right? We're coming up this pyramid. But every time we go up the pyramid, we have to take them around this cycle because we have to re-educate them about the case. We have to begin to understand those prospects and what they're interested in. And so it's walking around this cycle every single time to get those donors to move up that pyramid. It's not just a straight up the pyramid issue. Have anyone here used the Benavon model? It used to be called Raising More Money. Yeah, lots of people do the breakfast or the fundraising event where you go and you hear a visionary leader talk and then there's a ask for money, right? But what's interesting about that is so many do that event, but they don't do the rest of the model. And what's interesting is that Benavon model was based on, let's take people around this process. Let's deepen people's relationship with the organization so that they're interested in moving up, giving more, investing more time, investing more energy. So that's what this is all about, is getting people invested in the cause, in the mission. So, any questions about this? Before we move to I will say one thing. I give these trainings all the time about kind of deepening relationships with folks. And one of the ways you can tell how deep someone's relationship is with your organization is whether the person uses we language or they language. So I heard this a lot because I would do interviews with donors and board members and things like that throughout the country. And if the board member or the donor said, oh, they are so great. They serve so many people in our community. I just love being on their board, right? That's one side. Or we are so great. We serve so many people in our community. It is just a joy to be a part of this organization, right? It's very similar, right? But it's one step removed. So we people are going to give you a lot more money and a lot more time and a lot more energy than they people. But you've got to get them to we, because that comes naturally. That will happen, a switch will flip and they will become we. But it takes a while, it takes a long time, and it means that they're truly invested. That old adage, ask for advice, ask for money, get advice, ask for advice, get money. So always, what do you think about this? Oh, we're starting a new strategic planning session. You know, what do you think about these goals? You know, what would you recommend we do? Who would you recommend we hire? How would you recommend we go about this? Where should we have our meeting? I think you should go to the Holiday Inn. Oh, great, I'm gonna go check out the Holiday Inn. And then to be able to come back and say, hey, we're having our event at the Holiday Inn. Oh, that's great. Oh, they like me, they care about me, they care about my thoughts and, you know, what I want. And so it's a matter of deepening those relationships on multiple levels. Those first-time donors, when we're talking about donor retention, you spend the most to get them in the door. You're oftentimes losing money to get them in the door. So if you're doing something special for a donor, some people say, oh, our donor's over $500, we do this for. Our donor's over $1,000, we do this for. That's great, I'm not saying to stop that, but these are the people you need to treat extra special. If a board member is going to call them, you're going to send them a handwritten note, you're going to send them a welcome package, you're going to send something, you're going to call, you're going to engage them, because what they're saying is, this might interest me. Let me try this and see how it makes me feel. If it doesn't make them feel anything, then they're not going to give again. and you lose them. You spent $1.25 to bring them in the door, and you don't get them back. But if a board member calls them within 3 days of receiving the gift, they get a handwritten note from somebody, they're like, wow, that made me feel really important. Like, I sort of care about this organization, but I think I'm going to give them some more, right? Even if they didn't care that much about your cause to begin with, you'll become one of their favorites because you make them feel good. So taking, advantage of those little opportunities to deepen your relationship with folks is really great. Okay, calculating your retention rate. So this is, for those of you who do your retention rates all the time, you can, take a moment to check your email or whatever. But if your organization has a clear definition of how long it takes for a donor to lapse, then use that number. So we had a 3 years over here. That's fine. If not, use a year, just for, for the sake of having something. How many donors did you have in the calendar year? So we're going to say 2017, because we're not all the way through 2019 yet. How many donors did you have in calendar year 2017? How many donors did you have in calendar year 2018? How many donors in Group A were also in Group B? Okay. C divided by A, your retention rate, right? Are we following? It's a little mathy, I get it. Give it to your finance person, they'll love it. You feeling me? Questions about this? Industry standard is 50%. Who thinks that's great? It's not great, okay? That's not great. What you can do, this is a great measure to say, when you're talking about what your goals are, annual goals, it's not, I want to raise this much money, which is fine, put that out there. Say, I want to increase our retention rate by 5%, 10%, right? And you're measuring that. If you do that, retention could quintuple your fundraising. Quintuple. Okay, so keep the donors you have, rule number 1. Get them in the door, keep them. And you could have exponential growth, okay? So this, for those of you who didn't quite get it when we were going through the pyramid and the fundraising cycle, repeatedly asking donors for gifts without taking them through the full cycle, we're looking at fatigue, isolation, and attrition. All right, oh God, yes, they're asking me for $10 again. They're asking me for, I just can't do it anymore. I can't give anymore, I'm just tired. But if they're a part of the organization, they know what they're being asked for, they feel excited about the opportunity, then you're in a better place. You're in a better place. So make it easy on the donor. Make it a smooth process. Don't make them scale a mountain. Let them follow a path. Enjoy the journey with you. Does anybody have any good examples about how they do this? I know many of you do this because I know you out here. Anybody have a story you'd like to share? Yep.
So a lot of times, I'm with the food bank, and a lot of times we will offer a donor to come to the food bank to take a tour. And a lot of times that's a great way to just get them to know about the organization.
Do you ask them for money at the end of the tour?
Not normally, no.
Right?
Literally never.
Right. Okay, great. That's great. Just because they're interested and they want to know what that's about. What did you think? Do you have any suggestions for us? That's always great. Advice, advice, advice. Anybody, you don't have to raise your hand. Don't raise your hand, actually. Anybody include a remittance envelope in their thank you letters? Thank you so much. Cut me another check. Don't do that. Just wait. Just wait. There are plenty of times to ask. There are plenty of opportunities to ask. It's okay to say thank you and then ask. We don't want to wait forever to ask because people need to be engaged regularly. But let thank you be thank you. Let thank you be authentic. Yes?
I have a variation question on that.
Yeah.
When when people make a donation in memory of somebody else's animal who died,
Uh-huh.
so they don't know a whole lot about it.
Uh-huh.
So write them a thank you note talking about that and give them a little bit of, wow, this is why you should feel good. And then I usually do put a brochure in with it. Now, the middle part of our brochure is, here's how to fill out if you want to donate. Is that okay?
Yeah, so the question was, you've got a transactional donor. They've given not because they're personally motivated by your mission, but by something else. They want to buy something you're selling, or they want to honor somebody who's said, please give to this. This happens lots of times when people pass away. In lieu of flowers, please send gifts to, and they'll put a nonprofit organization in.
This is somebody who's made a donation because their friend's dog died.
Right, their friend's dog. Yeah, their friend's dog died. So, but they don't necessarily care about your organization. It's because their friend's dog died, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not yeah. So we're on the same path. So I think you're doing the right thing. You say thank you. You tell them about the organization, and then you can give them an invitation to give after. And if it's in there, it's a part of a brochure. That's very different, I think, than just a remittance envelope stuck in there. I mean, if it's just informative, that's fine. It's like kind of having a donate here, button on your website. I mean, you don't want to hide that information, right? But the question is, how long do you keep them in your database? So I think you should have a system for that, because there's a lot of transaction that goes on. Some people walk in a 5K because they like the mission. Other people walk in a 5K because they like a 5K. So do you want Mr. 5K in your database for 10 years? Probably not, right? Especially if they only gave for the 5K and they're not giving again. So decide what your system is, right? You give Mr. 5K, you send one request to be a part of the organization, you send him another request, and then you're done. He gets purged. As far as, not purged, you want to know that he still gave, but from a sense of I'm going to include them in every newsletter that I send out, that's probably not a good use of the organization's resources to just continue to send newsletters and annual appeals and things like that to somebody who said they didn't care about you in the first place, right? So that's the difference between a transactional donor and a relational donor. Understanding the difference is going to really matter. Transactional donors, if you can keep 50% of your transactional donors, you are amazing, right? Because if they give to the Girl Scouts because they want the cookies and that's it, then good luck keeping them as a donor. That's not really something that you can expect to happen. So, but those relational donors, people who gave because they love the Girl Scouts. Okay, I'll buy the cookies. I hate cookies and I'm diabetic to boot, but sure. Those are the people you want, right? Those are great donors to the Girl Scouts. Okay. So who are your organization's best prospects? It's a trick question.
Annual donors.
Yeah, your donors. And? Your volunteers. Good. Yeah, your donors and your volunteers. Right? Because they are already committed. They're already in. So before you go out there shopping for really expensive first-time donors, an average of $1.25 to get $1 in the door, keep the ones you've got and grow them. That's where the money is. I did have I was working with this multi-million-dollar net worth guy who volunteered at not our local humane society, but at another humane society. And he didn't give money, but he volunteered. And he said, I don't understand why people don't value volunteers.
He didn't value himself.
Yeah, but how much volunteer appreciation are we doing? We got to think about how we're thanking our volunteers. And volunteers, time is not money, so let's not, anybody who's on a board and says, well, I give my time. Well, time is not money. That's not the same thing. You need to give both. But time is something. And it's something that very busy people don't have much of. So if they're volunteering it with you, they should be appreciated for that. And if they're not appreciated for that properly, then you cannot expect them to ever give money. And so this guy, I mean, he loved the animals, he loved the Humane Society, but he had this disdain for the leadership in that particular community because of, you know, he felt like, I'm not appreciated, my contribution isn't appreciated, right? And it's easy to fall into that, okay? So any sort of organization can be there. So just think about how you treat your donors or your volunteers, because they can become donors, and when they do become donors, oftentimes they're the ones at the top of the pyramid, right? They're the planned gift donors, they're the capital gift donors, major gift donors, because they get you, and they're spending their time with you all the time. Okay, questions about that, comments? Has anybody found that to be the case, or is anybody doing anything really cool with their volunteers that they could share? Yeah.
We have, it's basically our culture and our staff. When you see a volunteer working, say thank you. Stop for 5 seconds, doesn't take that long. But we have one volunteer where he has become a true advocate of the organization. He now teaches and trains other volunteers. He has spoken at our annual meeting about why he volunteers. And he says time and time again, the thing that touches me the most is everybody will stop and just say thank you. So those 2 words are super powerful, and something that, I mean, we've taken somebody who started as just somebody who loved animals, and they came all the way up to being a great advocate for our organization.
Yeah, I bet he uses we language too.
He does.
He does, yes he does. Yeah, anybody else? Okay. So understanding a donor's motivation, this is listening, right? Active listening. Does anybody have an interesting story about how they have learned a particular donor's motivation? And was anybody ever surprised by the motivation? Yep.
So you know a little bit about our organization, Ann Charles, and I have 2 people involved right now. One just came on as our development chairperson. She's a new volunteer to our board, but she has been a donor because her deceased husband was the guy who always wanted to give somebody a $5 bill on the streets of downtown Dayton. And to honor him, she designated memorials to our organization when he died a few years back, and she's now in a position to not only be a donor, but be directly involved in the organization in retirement. So, you know, she's a good gain for us. It was kind of a natural relationship, but her initial motivation was her loved one was always helping the people on the street, and she knows that our organization is trying to get those people off the streets and help them move forward.
Yeah, so it's started by a motivation to honor a loved one, right? And then, you know, and that's probably still a motivator. Yeah, especially when that's kind of at the base, that forms that foundation of that motivation. That's a really important thing to know when you're thinking about plan giving or asking somebody for a major gift. Thinking about ways that you can honor that motivation. Yeah.
I had a rather unusual one where it was a leadership donor who said he gave to, it was a former organization I worked with for 2 reasons. Number 1, he really liked the VP of development. Number 2, we published a book of leaders, and he was going to be in a book of leaders.
Amen.
Keep doing what you're doing.
There you go. There you go. So any proposal to that particular donor is going to include some recognition, some public, you know, display, right? Some, you know, naming opportunity or something like that, because you know that is a motivator and that's meaningful to that person. So I had one of my fundraising mentors way back said, and I thought this was a great way to think about it. Once you get into that major donor, capital donor, planned gift donor level, every donor is a separate campaign. Every donor is a separate campaign. So think about that fundraising cycle, right? Develop the case. Develop the case for that donor, right? For that particular donor. Knowing what that looks like for them, and then how to engage them over a certain period of time. Is this a 12-month cultivation process, 18 months, 24, 36? But the only way you can get there is, right, if you're zooming out from the money, 'cause sometimes you have to sacrifice today money for longer term tomorrow money. You might not be able to get the $500 gift this year if you want to get the $50,000 gift in 2 years.
I remember reading this statistic where it takes someone, I think, 10 times giving $100 to an organization before they then become that big $10,000 donation. So sometimes we ignore those little chips.
Yeah, and we call those mid-level donors,
Yeah.
right? You know, who's like, oh, for some people, $1,000 is a major gift. For others, that's a mid-level gift, right? So whatever that mid-level is, if it's $250, it's not a small gift, but it's not a major gift. So it kind of falls in that middle piece. Those are ripe, very ripe for cultivation. To make sure that what's going to happen is they're either going to increase or they're going to stop. You also have to be careful about patterns, because if people get used to giving 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, and then you go and ask them for 1,000, it's like, whoa, I give 100. Don't you know me? I'm 100. And so you don't let somebody get too entrenched in that gift, right? Make sure that, if they're giving 100, 100, 100, 100, and that was a pledge for 1 year, that, come pledge time the next year, you're asking them for a specific increase. Don't let them get in that, 100, 100, 100 piece. Always asking for the growth. And it's better if it's not every year, unless it's a monthly donor. We were talking about monthly donors. But if you're asking every quarter, be on the radar. Ask for things that are specific, but be on their radar. Give them opportunities to participate. So thinking about why your donors give, how institutions and corporations are different from individual donors. Which is a more sustainable donor, a corporate donor or an individual donor? Okay, that's good. I'm glad we're all clear on that, right? But we need to remember what corporate donors, who makes the decisions in a corporate structure? A human, right? This is still a relationship-based activity. The more you want, the better you're going to know the people who make the decisions. So again, it's still an individual endeavor. It's still an individual who wants to give to you. But corporations don't have planned giving the way that individuals do. And if that individual moves on to another corporation, oftentimes the next person who in leadership may not be interested in continuing that giving pattern. So keep that in mind. And then thinking about how they're the same and different. Okay. As my husband likes to say when we're taking a road trip, we're making great time. Okay, so prospect rating made easy. People were talking about, okay, this is a monthly donor. This person's given sometime in the last 3 years. So if you want to rate your donors, you want to figure out, I don't know who my best prospects for major gift is. I don't know who my best prospect for a capital gift may be. This is a very, very easy way of doing this. You're going to look at recency. So how recently did they give? Frequency. How frequently do they give? And monetary. How big is the gift? So what I like to do is just pull a spreadsheet, make a column, have all your donors on the spreadsheet, make a column for recency, column for frequency, and a column for monetary. And the most recent, that's going to get a 3. If they haven't given if they gave this year, but it was early in the year, maybe that's a 2. And then they haven't given for a while, that's a 1. Okay? So we're getting real, this is the swag, right? It's not super scientific. This is the art and science of fundraising, right? We're trying to get an idea here. Frequency, same thing. You're going to go and rank them. 3, 2, 1. 3 for the most frequent, 1 for the least frequent, and then monetary, 3 for the highest number, 1 for the lowest number. Total them up, sort it by the total. If you need help with Excel, talk to a friend. And then see who's at the top, right? And then, I think usually people are surprised by how few are at the top. And that's for every organization, and a few for one organization is more for another, but it's not a lot oftentimes that you've got. And you can say, oh, well, I could cultivate that many people. Let's see who knows these people really well. And then, what do we say? Every donor, a separate campaign. So those people, if you've got 9s, you need a campaign for each of those donors. You need to make sure that you're trying to move them up. If you don't know if they have a planned gift, if they've left a provision for your organization in their will or estate plan, you can get there. It's a conversation you should have if you've got 9s, right? You might not have any 9s. You might have some 8s, some 7s. Fine. Work a plan for them. Who knows them? If you see, I've had organizations say, oh, we had a 9 and 2 8s, and one of these people, we don't know who they are. Okay, well, let's go meet them. But you don't know until you find out, right? But if you find out you don't know them, go meet them. Find out and say, I can't believe we haven't met before. We just realized, how committed you've been over the last, few years to our organization, and we realized we really needed to talk to you about, why you care so much, and, see what you think about our direction, and if you have any insights for us. And people usually spend some time talking to you. And then where to find new donors. Suggestions on that? Finding new donors?
Friends and family.
Friends and family, yes. That's exactly what we're going to talk about here. But others? Say it again? Absolutely, through your current donors, that's right. And then, I know none of us are guilty of pocketing the program with the thank you to our major donors, on it. Oh, this is so nice. It's so nice. Are you going to keep that? Can I have a copy? I need to give one to my development director. Just make sure that if you're going through those, it's somebody with a cause that is related to your cause, right? So, SICSA, stealing, humane societies, thank you, makes sense, and vice versa, right? We're not stealing, we're sharing. But it's good to know who's interested, right, across those. And, if you notice that you have people on both, having a conversation with the other organization to say, hey, what do they do for you? Can we coordinate something? If somebody's on one list and not on the other, that's one thing. But if they're on both lists, that's a huge opportunity for collaboration. Donors love it when their causes get along and work together and things like that. So, but, if I were, Habitat for Humanity, I wouldn't have necessarily picked up the program from the Schuster Performing Arts, right? They might be good, but they're not. There's no connection there, right? That would indicate that these folks were interested in any way in affordable housing. So it's good to know who's on there and see if your donors are on there, but you're not necessarily looking at those as hot prospects. You want to look for linkage, ability, and interest. And that's what we're talking about. Through your current donors, volunteers, through your current board members, linkage, ability, and interest. So linkage, they're connected to you in some way. Ability, they've got some disposable income. Interest, they care about what you do. And you can do a rating on these too. If you've got a list of people who you think, hey, we know all these people have ability. That's what usually people bring to the table. They bring the list of the people with ability. And they say, okay, look at all these people. They're not our donors. Why aren't they our donors? And then you can say, okay, well, what's our linkage to them? And what's their interest that we know of? So those are good ways to say, okay, among these, we have a linkage to 2, and one of those seems they might have an interest. Let's see if we can get in the door and talk to them. Ability is something that our folks tend to see more. We've got to stop thinking about fundraising as chasing a buck. That is not what we do. We're seeking partners to make the world a better place. And when we live into that, we're more successful. When we all are on the same page, I love social media because you get reminded of what you care about all the time. So, if you're posting random stuff that's not related to anything I care about, that's one thing. But if I really love your mission and I love to see, cats and I love to see some adoption stories, and then I know that that's happening, even though I'm just at my old job doing my thing, typing and whatnot. I know that I'm helping make this thing happen, and that's meaningful. So, just keeping that communication open. How do we see our donors? Think of them as in terms of their money, and we won't keep them very long. So just, people don't want to be thought of for what they have. You'll notice that most of your affluent donors don't want to talk about their money. They don't want to talk about their gift. They want to talk about your family, what their recent vacation was. People want to be seen as human beings who are interesting and have something to contribute to the world, not as just a big pot of money. So we need to be able to give that to the folks we want to be a part of our organizations. Listen to them, get to know them personally, consider them valuable partners in the mission, and we'll do great things together for the cause. Does anybody have a really good example of how this worked for them? Because I know you all do it, because I know you. So many familiar faces. I know you've done this. So, any great stories? Yep.
I wonder if maybe not doing this quite right is early on there was a couple that gave so generously to the organization that I assumed that they wanted to hear everything about the organization. And so I thought it was appropriate. So I told them, this is happening, this is happening. And at some point, the response, the engagement dropped off a bit. They kept giving, but I realized that, no, they're giving largely because of a relationship here too, and so they want to continue a relationship, not just the ministry updates.
Yeah, that's good insight. Were you able to kind of pivot and engage in another way, or?
Yeah. We have breakfast every Thursday.
Awesome.
And we almost never talk about the organization.
Right? Yeah. So, for that, you make sure you take people with you, okay? Because that's one of those things that can sometimes, especially with folks who may make a planned gift or something like that, making sure that the relationship is with the organization and not with you as that representative of the organization is part of your responsibility as an executive director, as a development director, because especially as our clients get older and our donors get older and are seeking that depth of relationship, you don't want them to mistake that as a personal relationship, although you're friendly, right? Making that clear is very important from an ethical standpoint as fundraisers. So, other great ways, yeah?
One of the things I've told my board is, we talked a lot about Facebook today. Be careful what you post on your personal Facebook. It will reflect back on your organization. Especially if you're getting into political or religious things, if you're a pro-Trump, anti-Trump as an example, and you're posting that on your personal page, that will reflect back on your organization very quickly.
Yeah. We are representative of our organizations, and that's absolutely true. At the same time, we're all human, right? And so it's kind of like, when a donor calls and says, so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes you have to talk them down and say, that does not reflect the views of the organization. And we really support everyone being who they are and being authentic, and try to have some communication plan for that sort of thing. But you're right. I always was very reluctant to put any bumper stickers on my car, just because you just never know like what's gonna get somebody worked up. If it was something I really cared about, I'd put it out there. But if it's like, I'll just let it go.
So I only put stupid stuff on mine. Once you tell your husband something needs to be done, he'll take care of it. There's no need to remind him every 3 months.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. Okay.
The other thing I wanted to share,
Mm-hmm.
probably, I've been the executive director of my organization for 18 years. Like 15, 16 years ago, the United Way had a guy come in named Marshall Howard.
Mm-hmm.
And Marshall has a book that's called Let's Have Lunch Together. And it was really a good book because it talks about relationships with donors. And the board president takes the new executive director to lunch because the executive director goes out and is trying to solicit money. As very matter of fact, you can't understand why nobody will give because they've got great statistics and information, but they're not building a relationship with that person at the same time.
Well, and I think we need to remember too that no matter how hardcore our donors may seem, about their statistics and their numbers and all this stuff, humans are motivated by emotions, right? So you need to provide the statistics, but you have got to have a compelling story that that motivates someone from a deeper level, from an emotional level. They need to be able to be feel compassion, feel hope, feel sympathy for other people and animals and issues and the earth and whatever it may be. You've got to touch that part, because once that's engaged, then they look at the numbers. It's once they say, "Oh, this matters," I feel something about this, then they look at the stats. So don't, just because you're talking to an engineer doesn't mean you can leave out the storytelling. Storytelling has kept us alive as a species, right? And it's what will keep our organizations alive as well. So giving donors what they want. Anybody who's read Penelope Burke, any of her fabulous work is gonna know these already, but prompt personalized acknowledgement of gifts, confirmation that gifts have been set to work as intended, measurable results on gifts at work prior to being asked for another contribution. Would you help pay for this treatment for this animal? Hey, the treatment happened and the animal is healed. Wow, okay, ask for another thing. Right? You can do it quickly. It doesn't have to take a long time, right? But you've got to be able to show, hey, you did something good. Would you help some more about this other thing? Okay, thank you. This is the result. Help some more with this other thing. What are some ways you say thank you? Anybody say thank you in some creative ways? I love the thank you, just like having that as a standard. And I think that should go for staff too. I don't know about you, but if somebody makes me copy or something, say thank you. Doesn't matter if making copies is their job or not, right? That's not, but giving that morale, giving that sense of we appreciate one another and the contributions we have to give is huge to sustaining that commitment to the organization from a staff or volunteer level. Anybody do something cool for thank yous? Yeah.
I've done a photo book for donors to show them the results in pictures. And they might not be social media people, so the old-fashioned.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that creative, but it's something easy that anyone can do. After our annual campaign, we send out the form letter with their tax receipt and all that, and then we have our board do a thankathon where they sit down and write handwritten note cards to everyone who gave to the annual campaign. So we divide it up and we do it over a few board meetings, but everyone gets 2 thank yous.
That's great. That's great. Others? Yeah.
I work for or partner with a school corporation, and we fund classroom grants. When the students provide us with their thank you cards and so forth, I will either copy them or send an original, if you will, with
Yeah.
a thank you note.
That's great.
And when I do that, when I'm able to do that, I get more thank yous in return for my thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm not the artist or the author of those, but yeah.
Yeah. I worked with a Habitat for Humanity affiliate in Evansville, and they had a major donor who, of course, he had more money than he knew what to do with. So what are they going to do for him that was really meaningful? They didn't want to just send him some tchotchke or something, but they wanted to do something exciting. So they had all the kids in their program at the time get together and sing happy birthday and videotaped it and sent it to him. And it was just, didn't take any kind of effort really, but like, how exciting is that, if you got that from your organization, if you get it from your grandkids, it's one thing, right? But if you get it from an organization that you're a part of that says, we remembered your birthday, we didn't send you anything, we sung happy birthday to you. I thought that was really very cool and very personal, and it was something that they thought a lot about. They knew he wouldn't want it out there posted anywhere, so they didn't put it on Facebook. Some people would want that, right? Some people want the recognition of other people seeing that the organization cares about them. This person wasn't like that. So just kind of understanding what would be meaningful to a particular donor. All right, any questions? So I've done this, I usually do this with breakouts throughout, and we do some workshopping, and it's about a 4-hour session. So you've just had a 4-hour session in an hour. So if you have any questions, that would make a lot of sense. Yes?
Because we are young organization, and the first part of the presentation talked about the donor retention rate and how long to keep someone. So I can see, that you've got kind of a couple-year process because you've got to do that ABC, okay? But then if you find that there's not a lot of new donations coming because it may have been one of those memorial gift type things, then when do you drop those folks off? What's the average or the best thought on that?
It's art and science, right? There's no good answer. Sometimes I'll do, I'd say, well, if you feel like, I don't want to give up hope on this pot of people, right? You decide to do a lapsed donor mailing, just one more, or we're gonna call it quits, but then we're gonna have this, hey, you used to give and you don't give anymore, and we really need you, and if you are committed to us, we're doing amazing things, but we're gonna leave you alone after this. We're not gonna ask you anymore. So give it kind of a last notice kind of thing that says, hey, you want to keep hearing from us? We need to hear from you. And it's either a donation, or you can even say, just return this and say that you want to hear from us, or you want to stay on our mailing list, or whatever it happens to be. But tell them you're going to cut them. That's a way to do it. You're in or you're out. Yeah, because you don't want to take somebody out who wants to be in, right? But you also don't want to spend. I've seen lists that have thousands of lapsed donors on them that people are sending to, and that's a lot of money. Yeah. So be smart about that. You've got limited resources. Anybody else? Well, thank you for your time. I'll be here if anybody has anything else, but I'm glad to be here today.